Welcome to this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, episode 892. This is a very special edition of the Real Deal Podcast because, as I told you a few months back, as I promised, and I was delivered on that promise that I would bring back Snowfall and review the first three seasons. Of course, when we started reviewing Snowfall, we started back in 2021 with season 4, and we did seasons 4 through 6. Now we are back with season 1, episode 1, the pilot. So this is we look at themes, right? I should play it. I apologize. I'm a little rusty here. I didn't put themes on the slides, so we'll fix that next episode. Themes, I had wanting more. So I was kind of thrown off a little bit with this pilot episode in a good way because I expected there to be more of a sense of build up, and more character develop in my mind from the times that I've watched the first episode, the pilot episode, at least a number of times, and when I rewatched it, or even the first time I watched it back in 2017. Of course, this show premiered July 5th, 2017. But I'm gonna be honest with you, when you talk about Franklin, Teddy, Gustavo, as the story centered around those three characters' storylines, and basically the entire series centered around those three characters and their storylines and how they intertwine eventually. I'll be honest with you, they started the ground running, and they started the ground running, and each one of these characters made a decision in this particular episode, and only again episode 1, that would change forever the course of their lives and would carry on and really set the tone for this entire series. I was surprised. I was kind of taken back on just how much they gave us in this first episode. I mean, they gave us a lot. Like there was, and again, of course, there's setup. There was a lot of setup, and as we this thing went 60 episodes, 6 seasons. So you didn't see everything, but you think about everything that you did see in this episode. For a first episode, there was a lot. Like you see Franklin get put on into the drug game immediately, with a key from Avi, getting the key from Avi. You see Teddy immediately get put on to figuring out a way how to fund a war. You see Gustavo introduced, or you see Gustavo already with having a relationship with a drug cartel, the villain wave of a drug cartel, and he does a job that attempts to do a job for them, but of course it goes wrong with some of the with him, of course, killing a one of the bodyguards of someone that, of course, that we will find out that was connected to Lucille and the Villanueva family, and we'll have plenty of time to flush that out. But all these three characters, made decisions that would change their lives forever. And again, I was just surprised going back and watching this once again, and coming from a perspective of what's going, like, this is the first time I've watched it from a perspective that I was going to do a podcast on it for the first in terms of season 1. Again, we've done seasons 4 through 6, so it was a different perspective and of course I've already seen the entire series. So you saw a lot of breadcrumbs that really set the tone for the entire series, and really they did not, like, there was some setup, but really they really got the ball running, and really dove right into who these characters were. Even the characters like Avi and Franklin's friend Rob, even characters like that, you got to know a lot, Claudia. So let's go deep dive Franklin Saint. So you can tell then this was shot, I believe this was shot in 2016. The pilot was shot in 2016. The show premiered in 2017. Remember, it premiered in summer 2017, maybe, and I'm sure they probably were shooting episodes early, late 2016, maybe even early 2017. You can tell how young Damson Ilgers was when he first shot this. I believe he was 25. I believe he was 25. You could just like there, clean shaven, kid like, a kid like, kid like baby face. There was a sense of teenage coming of age exuberance and playfulness with Franklin and how he interacted with Kevin and Leon. You see him joking on the bus with the radio. You see them playing, you see them fraternizing with the little kids. But what really jumped out to me about Franklin in this episode was he was ahead of all of us, and rightfully so. In terms of when we first saw it, we didn't know what was going to turn out, but he already had the vision of what he wanted to be in episode one. Like he's talking about. So I'll give you a couple of examples. One of the first scene of the entire series, kids, rip off ice cream man. They take his stuff or attempt to take his stuff, some potato chips and what have you. He catches the kids, gets the potato chips back for the ice cream man. They say, and you have Leon and Kevin say, why'd you do that? And he says, "Hey, I gotta teach him that's not the way. That's not how I teach him how America works." Then you see him talk to Mel about in a later scene about where his head is at in terms of what he wanted to do. And you saw a lot of breadcrumbs with Franklin in regards to this drug thing. And I really believe that in episode one, he had an idea that he wanted to become a drug kingpin. I really believe that. And I know it's easy for me to say that considering I've seen the entire series and we see what happens, but he was just looking for an opening. He was just looking for an opening. And again, he's already in the drug game. Like this is not a situation where he was green to how the entire game worked, of course, because he had lacked experience. He was not green in terms of the drug game in general because he was selling stuff. He was selling dime bags and working for Jerome. So he takes that knowledge and that curiosity. Once he sees that, he gets curious from that standpoint. And that was all he needed. We'll talk about some of the scenes later that to kind of further explain that, but you could see the wheels turning throughout the course of this episode in terms of how he was moving. Going to Rob, and going to Rob, which would lead to Avi and what have you. And again, all he needed was a push, and he got the push. Of course, we'll talk about Louis. He got that push from Louis that set everything off. But this was a guy who looked to me, even in episode one, like I'm going to do something bigger. I'm just not going to be doing dime bags. I'm going to do something big with this. I don't know how it's going to look. I'm not saying he had every detail lined up, planned, and to like he had this vision board or whatever. But you could just see like just how he was talking, and how you could see the mature. He was mature, way mature beyond his years from that standpoint. We'll talk about that when we talk about some of the best scenes. Franklin, Leon, and Kevin. We talked about this a little bit. Franklin, they open the series. He's discussing. He tries, tells the little kids, don't, not to steal. Basically, they ask him. Leon and Kevin ask him why he did that, and he explains, "I gotta show them how." America Works. Louis, Jerome, and the side piece, the girl that Jerome slept with. Now, this was a funny scene, but it was also a very. I might have looked past. I might have looked past this scene a number of times that I watched this first season, and just as comedy, but it was bigger than that. So one of Jerome's side chicks comes up to the door right in the middle of General Hospital. Luke and Laura. This is when General Hospital was popping. Like Luke and Laura were the biggest things on soap opera television at that time. And Lou's watching General Hospital. Jerome's side piece pops up, says, "What's up, Jerome? I need to speak to you." He just completely dismisses her and said, "Look, you got 5 seconds to leave my door." She keeps knocking on the door, and Louis says to Jerome, "Now this complete dysfunction of their relationship." She says, "I told you not to fuck that girl without me. Now look at you." So she's accepting that Jerome is sleeping with other women. Matter of fact, she like, hey, we can all get down if you want to. I don't care that you slept with another woman, but why could you should let me in, you should have let me in on it. Anyway, too, we see how loyal Louie is. She's not angry. No, she wasn't even, she was annoyed. She was more so annoyed that her stories were getting disrupted. That was the most annoying thing. She's more upset about that than Jerome sleeping with another woman. She's more upset about you interrupting my General Hospital time. So she whips the girl's ass and Jerome tells Franklin, look at your auntie. Shit turns me on. That right there would define their relationship. That it was it that I mean completely defined their relationship. The dysfunction, the loyalty, the love, everything. And what I did notice as well, and I'll talk more about this later because we're gonna speak more about Louis later on in the episode. But that scene told you everything you need to know about what type of relationship that they had. Franklin and Avi. So Franklin, Rob runs out of coke. Rob needs some more coke, so he sends Franklin to go see Avi to get some. Franklin, of course, Avi is a Israeli gun dealer who has drugs, who's Avi's connect, not Avi's, but Rob's connect. Rob really doesn't want to go there, so he sends Franklin. Avi, of course, calls Rob a pussy, and Franklin immediately gets that, like he understands when they approach Avi's place, he immediately hears a gunshot. Avi has shot one of his guys with a bulletproof vest on. Still, the bullet still didn't go through, but I'm sure it packed a lung or something. So he immediately knows that this guy is off. That this guy is off, just like Rob said he was off. And despite that, Franklin's intrigued. So Franklin goes and tries to buy some money, tries to get Rob's some cocaine from Avi. Avi says, "Hey, I don't sell to kids. I especially don't sell. I only deal in keys." Franklin says, "Hey, give me a key then," nervously. And Avi says, "How are you gonna put?" Okay, so Franklin, so Avi to prove Franklin's loyalty, Avi decides to put a bulletproof vest on Franklin, and Franklin is going to take the shot to prove his loyalty to Avi. Avi doesn't shoot Franklin; he shoots a champagne bottle. He respects Franklin's. Says you got balls, kid. So he respects Franklin's courage and gives Franklin a key and gives him 24 hours to flip that key. So that was Franklin's introduction. Official but unofficial introduction to the drug game. Because he has 24 hours to flip a key. This is not just to flip a key. And he meets one of the most important people he will meet in the entire series, and he already established his. They've already had they built their relationship starting from there. Franklin, Louis, and Claudia. So Franklin. So now, but there's another scene that I didn't put on here where Franklin now is under the gun. He has to flip this key in 24 hours, and he doesn't have any distribution that could flip a key in 24 hours. Period. So he goes to Jerome. Jerome says, "Look, man, I do weed, dime bags. I do little that. I'll do neighborhood stuff. I don't want." Basically, Jerome says, "I don't want any part of this. Like, I don't want nobody coming through my door. You don't know what you're opening yourself up to with that key, with that brick." So Jerome brushes him off, says, "Get that shit out my house." So Lily is in the back. She hears this, and she approaches Franklin and says, "Is it real? Is this real?" So he says, "Yes." They go meet up with Claudia. Claudia initially, now clearly there's been a past relationship with Louis and Claudia, which they certainly will get into as these episodes go, as the series goes along, as season one goes along. So they clearly know each other. They clearly don't trust Louis. As soon as they get in, Claudia smacks Louis, pulls out a gun, and says, "I smell a setup." So she comes in. Um, so one of her number one guy or her number two sniffs the cocaine and says, "Hey, no, this is the real deal. This is the caviar." So Claudia, Franklin, Claudia takes it off. Franklin promises to if she buys that key to get another one, and then they could do business moving forward as well. Um, she does make Franklin tell her basically who is this from. The Washington, basically Washington, I could easily take this, and says if he, basically, and Franklin, this is where Franklin was well beyond his years, and he talks himself out of getting a bullet because she could easily took that and like sold it on her own and made money. He says, "Hey, you take this, you're gonna have an Israeli drug dealer, looking for you, looking for me. If I'm dead, then he's gonna be looking for you until he gets his money." So she sees that this guy, that Franklin, is for real. She sees that this thing is that him having a key is for real. So she lets him go. He flips that, gives him the money, and Franklin has flipped the key. Was able to flip the key in less than 24 hours. Again, in this scene, you see the desperation of Franklin, along with the cunning of Franklin Saint as well, looking down the road and basically looking down the road and talking himself out of getting killed. And he was right. Abby would have came after that key, looking for Claudia, and Claudia knows that Franklin was right. That's why, and she ends up letting him go despite her kind of shaky relationship at the time, kind of shaky relationship with Louis. Franklin, Louis, and Arden. So they're driving home, and we see the first appearance of Franklin's father. He was mentioned earlier in the episode in terms of Rome, and he had asked me, "Hey, you seen him?" And Franklin said no. So we find out that Alton, Franklin's father, is on the street. He's homeless. Franklin doesn't say anything to him as he's, and tells Louis that he's not going to say anything to him. Basically tells her to drop the car off, and you see a tear coming down his eye, similar, that Denzel glory tear coming down his eye, and we'll see more about that dynamic, and that's how the episode wraps up. So again, you had Franklin getting completely introduced to the drug game in a real way. Um, you had Teddy, some other things, other happenings in the episode. Teddy, of course, gets now Teddy is in a is kind of in a lame duck job with the CIA. One of their operatives overdoses and a guy who named Alejandro brings calls Teddy. Teddy comes to see to this house, this beautiful house on the hills. He Teddy knows something's up. Like he knows something is up with regards to the guys not being straightforward to him. He sees blood spots. He helps Alejandro clean the house up. Alejandro explains to him why he didn't call the cops after the guy overdosed because he had a bunch of drugs hidden, numerous keys of drugs hidden, cocaine hidden in this floor, and immediately, similar to Franklin, Teddy's wheels start spinning. He talks to his Bill supervisor, into saying, "Look, I can do this. I can do this. I'm not gonna be like Logan Miller, the previous guy that ended up ODing and get killed behind this." So Teddy went from basically a dead end, no going nowhere job in the CIA. Now he is completely in the game, dealing with Alejandro as they will, partner over this particular season. And there's no trust between those two, between Alejandro and Teddy. Teddy does not believe for a second that something else, that there were no other bodies in that house. We'll see moving forward. We'll see moving forward how that plays out. So all three of the characters, again, Franklin, Teddy, Gustavo, all made decisions that would in essence change their lives, and they made decisions that would change their lives, taking just gargantuan risk. All decisions they make are risky, life threatening, risky. But that's where they were at, saying that the risk, of course, they thought that the risk would be worth the reward. Um, Again, all of them, we'll see how they all intertwine and how they all are connected. The MVP of this episode was without question Louis. She saves, in essence, saves Franklin's life, turns him on, puts him on to Claudia, and was able to help him flip that key. If he doesn't flip that key, he's in essence a dead man walking in regards to what would transpire with Avi. And also Angela Lewis was tremendous in this episode. Just her what she looked like in season 6. I have actually more respect for the actress, considering like she's completely shermed out in this episode. One of the scenes where she was asleep, she said, basically Jerome said her sherm smoking self is knocked out. So you can tell, like, again, the physical transformation you see from season 1 to season 6 is just phenomenal. That is all Angela Lewis. I mean, with the makeup people and the costume design, things like that nature, give them some credit. But as far as just her body language and things like that, you could tell that she was at her bottom, almost at rock bottom in regards to where we will see her moving forward as the series moves along. So she was the MVP of the episode. That's going to do it all. That's going to wrap it up for this latest edition of the Real Deal Podcast, Season 1, Episode 1, the pilot of Snowfall, as we begin looking back at seasons 1 through 3. I will see you next time with Season 1, Episode 2. So long.